so Amanda just told you a lot about the Evolution Outreach Committee at CU Boulder and a lot of the events we do, and she mentioned this teaching workshop, or this workshop for K through 12 teachers that we put on annually, so I'm going to really focus on that particular event. Okay, and so just to dive right in, that with this event we have a couple of goals, and they kind of mirror our goals for the Outreach Committee as a whole. So we'd like to improve scientific thinking and understanding broadly across Colorado, but in particular, we're trying to combat the rejection of science that happens with particular topics in some communities. So this started, the first year that this workshop happened was 2005. Ooh, does this work? Nice. Okay, so this first happened in 2005, specifically focusing on evolution. And then in 2013, we added climate change, and we discussed a few other topics that are actually not scientifically controversial, but can be contentious when it comes to interacting with the broader public about them. Okay, so why do we do this in the format of a teaching workshop specifically? Well, if we were to all have direct outreach and go into schools and things like that to work directly with students, all of us individually might be able to reach dozens of students per year, perhaps, if we pool that all together. But by working with teachers who then have all of their students, we can potentially impact thousands of students. So it really gives a lot of bang for our buck there. Also, for teachers, these topics that are contentious are challenging. And they're challenging for a couple of reasons. You may actually have students that are openly combative about these topics. Certainly, I think this isn't incredibly common, but you may have students who are bringing up misconceptions, trying to ask gotcha questions, or just kind of being disruptive in the classroom. Even if you don't have those students, you might have students who are disengaged. So maybe someone in their life told them, hey, when your teacher starts talking about evolution, I want you to stop listening. So it's going to be a lot harder to reach some proportion of your students when these topics are contentious. But there's another reason that these can be really challenging that I actually wasn't aware of before I started getting involved with this. And that's that some of these teachers that we interact with actually don't have enough foundation or don't know enough about these topics themselves to teach them confidently. Of course, there are a lot of teachers who are experts and who really know a great deal, but we actually see a bunch of teachers who are looking, when they come to this workshop, to just get a better foundation so that they can feel more confident when they're in the classroom. All right, so I'll just briefly go over what this day looks like and talk a little bit of specifics about certain talks, and then move on to sort of the impact that we've had over the years that we've been doing it. So we do this one day. It's a full day on a Saturday, and we time it towards the beginning of the school year. So it happened at the very end of August this year, and that's because that's when a lot of teachers are really thinking about curriculum and kind of primed for this sort of stuff. We have an opening and a closing keynote talk, so those are each an hour. And then throughout the rest of the day, we have several concurrent sessions of talks, so teachers can come to whichever ones interest them the most. We also generally have a panel discussion about a particular topic that we think we want to sort of have more concentrated discussion for. And I'll go over these in a little more detail. Okay, so in general, for these talks that are in these concurrent sessions, there's a few different approaches or a few different kind of broad categories of talks that they tend to be. So like I was saying, a lot of teachers, or at least some of these teachers, really are looking for a more solid foundation in these topics. So we try to provide that. Every year we have Evolution 101 and Climate Change 101, and we often, we generally actually put those on multiple times. So we have, we teach each of these or give each of these talks twice, and they're really, really well attended. And because we have concurrent sessions, of course, those teachers that already have that great foundation can attend a different talk. There are talks discussing research that's happening in our department. So we like those and teachers like those because it gives them kind of the latest and greatest news about climate change or about evolution. And they tend to be really cool and interesting. We have talks that are focused on teaching STEM. How do you, sort of looking at at latest education literature, how do we access these students and sort of teach them about the learning process to be more open about this stuff? And the other one that I think are always like big crowd favorite, teachers love this, is we try to provide lesson plans and packaged classroom units that they can take directly back and take off some of the enormous load of coming up with that stuff in the classroom. Okay, so just to give you a few examples of particular sessions, particular talks that I think have been really successful in the past couple of years. Last year, David Westmoreland, who's on the faculty at the Air Force Academy in Colorado, gave a really awesome talk looking at, it was a lesson plan about a particular activity that's designed to teach the meaning of the word theory in science, because of course that's a word that differs in how we use it in science and the general lexicon. So it was using Jenga. So there are these groups of students, and they start playing a Jenga game, and then you stop them after a few minutes when they have their towers. And then you say, okay, now you're scientists, and you're visiting a village that's abandoned, and you find in a lot of these houses there are these Jenga blocks. So we're scientists. Let's make some really careful observations of these towers. So students will observe something like, okay, all of these towers are different, but they all have 54 blocks. Most of these houses have these towers, those kinds of careful observations. And so you come up with a list, right? Once you have your list of the observations, the students are then asked to develop theories to explain those observations. And they can't say this is a game, right? So these are theories outside of the game world. Some good examples that students have come up with in the past, apparently they get really creative. So one group of students said, I think maybe these are seismometers that geologists use to measure earthquake activity in the region. Another theory that students came up with was maybe these towers are explaining the family history of the people that live here, that kind of thing. So, right, and once they have their list of theories, for each of those theories, they have to develop a testable prediction that scientists could then go out and test. So if they are, in fact, seismometers, you would expect to find towers fallen down all in the same region, right? If they were actually measuring family histories, or not measuring, but describing family histories, you'd expect that houses that were maybe larger, had more bedrooms, indicating larger families, might have more complex towers. Those are things that you could really directly test. Okay, so David has run this for a little while, and he's done a lot of pre-tests and post-testing about this, and has found that it really has dramatically improved the understanding of this topic and of the scientific process among those students. So this particular lesson just got published in American Biology Teacher, so there's a nice PDF about it, which I have and would be happy to send to you if you're interested. Okay, so that's that talk. Last year also, Scott Fahrenberg, who was a graduate student in the department, and he's now a postdoc, he did a really great talk on how to sort of use long-term climate data to teach about climate versus weather. So this, again, was a lesson plan that was really directly kind of portable to the classroom. And as I said, so he was using long-term data that's freely available on the web. There's a lot of it out there, specifically to teach about the difference between climate and weather. And there's a few things I love about this. One is that it's using that data that's already out there and exposing students to those data. But also the students are working directly with the data themselves. So they're being exposed to that entire process. Moving on. Okay, so this year, Tyler Square, who's a graduate student, again in our department, did a talk that's focused on his research. So looking at, he studies evolution and development, and so looking at how you can use development to look into evolution, which is something that we actually hadn't had a lot of before, and a lot of teachers maybe haven't been exposed to it as much as the science community. And so the idea is he talked a lot about what this field of science does, using embryonic development to look at evolution, and specifically using it to develop genes that are involved in particular evolutionary traits. But then the really fun thing is he also had put together a game, Name That Embryo. So was showing all these different embryos that thank you, that maybe look similar, and that's also another game that students would enjoy and can be ported back to the classroom. So the last one I wanted to talk about, the last kind of specific talk, was one that Amanda Hund, who you just saw, gave this year about vaccines. So vaccines are, they certainly are very closely related to evolution, but they're kind of in their own category in terms of a contentious topic. And in Colorado, especially in Boulder, it's one that actually is a really important one locally. So what Amanda did is she gave some background on the biology of antibiotics and vaccines in particular. But the bulk of it was about this case study that, again, the teachers could use directly in their classroom. So in this case study, the students are, they're decision makers in a community. So this is a community that has just had, it's a fictional community with a fictional disease that's suddenly come up. And these students are asked to use an SIR model, which is a model that epidemiologists use to track diseases, to come up with the best policy that this community can use to combat this disease. So how many people, if there's suddenly a vaccine, how many people should be vaccinated, at what rate should they be vaccinated, et cetera, et cetera. So using the data associated with that specific disease and that specific epidemic to inform policy. And students get to have that experience and really wrestle with the best course of action. So it was going over that case study, but also there's a really nice discussion about the role of this in the classroom. Is this something we should be teaching? How are these particular teachers, how are their students impacted by sort of the contentions around vaccines? In fact, there was a recent CDC study that indicated that Colorado kindergartners have the lowest vaccination rate in the nation. So this was really, really great to have us locally in Boulder discussing this one. Okay, and we've had a lot of other really awesome talks over the years about Russian fox domestication, using that as a case study. There was one this year about the evolution of cannabis, which is always a hot topic. There's local climate change. Matt Wilkins did an awesome one a couple years ago on linguistic evolution and using that as a way to teach natural selection and biological evolution. Did a great one this year on the California droughts. We had pond mesocosms as a classroom tool where students get to actually make their own communities, really good in emerging infectious diseases. And of course, if you were interested in putting on something like this, it wouldn't have to be about evolution or climate change, and there's really a really wide variety of talks or topics that you could discuss. Oh yeah, and just to mention, so a lot of the speakers come from our department, but we actually do recruit speakers from elsewhere as well. So there's that nice kind of breadth in terms of who everybody's interacting with. And these talks change every year, so teachers can actually come back and still hopefully get something out of this. Okay, and so I talked a lot about the stuff that we as our committee and as the department kind of are information that we're trying to provide to teachers, but we also get a lot out of the experience as well, and we get learn a lot from the teachers. So we have built-in discussion time, especially during lunch, but also, within the talks, there's a lot of them are certainly very discussion-oriented, and there's breaks and things, and so I feel like my own teaching has improved a great deal because of doing this. It's really fun, and not just my teaching, but even my research is really nice to have that connection to the world outside of academia. And the teachers are also learning a lot from each other. It's generally a really awesome time. Okay, so just to go over a little bit about what we feel like our impact has been since we've been doing this. So as I said, it started in 2005, so this year was our 11th time doing it. And each year we have about 40 to 60 teachers come. And so if you think about that, so there's a lot of teachers who come more than once, but we're reaching hundreds of teachers and by extension, thousands of students. And they're coming from lots of different types of education communities. So we have public and private school teachers, middle school and high school, alternative schools. Someone came from an online K-12 school. We've got hiking guides, people doing outreach at like the Denver Museum and zoos, and from community colleges. So there's a lot of different kind of backgrounds all coming together, which is great. And just in terms of the geographic locations, this is just from this year. There's a lot of people coming from Boulder and Denver, but it's not exclusively from those areas. So we're actually, if you look across the whole state of Colorado, there's a pretty big chunk of it that we're interacting with. And that begs the question, how do we get them there? What do we do for advertising and stuff? So one of the things that I think is the most important way we advertise and get people to come to this workshop is by providing continuing education credit for it. So teachers, if they want to, can get a half credit from the Colorado School of Mines for coming to this. And I think that's, so a lot of teachers find out about it through their website, and a lot of teachers wouldn't come, actually, I think, if it weren't for that credit. So I think that's really awesome and important to do. We also email school districts with a flyer like the one up there and a lot of information. And we email science education listservs as well. And so this setting up this credit and doing these emails is the primary way that we advertise. So I'm running out of time, but I just want to leave you with by saying that this is really doable. I think we've had a huge impact, but it hasn't been because nobody's working full time on this. So it's actually really inexpensive. Our department is generous and gives us a couple $100s a year to put this on, which we use to buy coffee and stuff. But we actually also provide an awesome lunch to the students, to the teachers, and that is because restaurants are willing to donate food. So a lot of restaurants have donation budgets, and they are very happy to donate to this kind of cause. And so we're able to make it a lot kind of fancier than you would expect on a couple $100s, if that. As Amanda was alluding to, we share the organizing load, so it's not a giant burden on any one person, and so we share that among people, but we also start well in advance so that it's kind of temporally shared, so at any one time you don't have to do a huge amount. And so you guys can all go do this too, absolutely. We're just a bunch of grad students. Somebody just decided to start doing this one day. You don't need any special powers, and it's really, really fun. So I'd like to acknowledge a lot of awesome people. I'm not going to read them name by name because I am running out of time. And one thing I really want to mention is that we're really sad about it. Amanda and I actually have to leave before the very end today because we have an 8-hour drive, and I teach tomorrow morning. So please, if you're interested in this, talk to us before the end of the day, and feel very free to email us at those email addresses, and we'd be really excited to talk to you. Thank you.